Hello, today I'm going to talk with you about 8 qualities that I believe every successful business owner possesses. And we're going to discuss which ones you possess and at what level of each of those qualities are you at this point. I'm going to try to help you become more self-aware of these qualities and so that you can work on them because it's not something that can be taught. It's something that you personally have to work on a daily, weekly, and yearly basis. For those of you who are new, my name is Bill, and I'm the Home Watch Advisor. This channel is dedicated to helping home watch businesses become successful. I've had a fair amount of success in my years. I helped develop 3 very successful home watch businesses in Southwest Florida. I started and still am the president of the Florida Home Watch Association. I started that back in 2014. And I've personally provided over 12,000, possibly even as many as 13,000 service calls to my home watch customers. And so, as the president and founder of the Florida Home Watch Association, which I founded in 2014, I've helped train hundreds of other people in the home watch business. And through that effort, I've effected thousands more service calls. So today, the first quality I want to discuss, and the one that I feel is probably the most important in all 8 of them, because it has to deal with you and your self-awareness. Now, if you cannot be self-aware, if you can't reflect upon you as a person and how you are achieving certain goals and maybe what your strengths would be and what then maybe your weaknesses are that you can work on and what things trigger you and make you upset, you can't become a good business person. You just can't. You have to be able to be self-reflective, look at your business in an honest, raw way and say, okay, this year, these are the things I feel I really achieved success with. And these are the things I believe I need to work on, things that I either need to change or I need to improve upon. And then if I had bad times, and we all do, we all have a bad day or two or a week, what were the things that triggered me to react the way that I did in a certain circumstance? And whatever that may be, I want to work upon recognizing that trigger so that the next time it happens, I can maybe take a little bit more of an even keeled approach to that situation or that person or whatever it may be. And these things are very important in business because if you're not constantly improving, then you're stagnant. And if you're stagnant in business, your competition is going to find a way around that stagnation. Even if you were the leader in your area, the leader business, the one that most people looked at and said, geez, that's the gem on the hill kind of a thing. When you slow down or you're not able to move forward in a positive way, you're going to have an issue. And so you always want to be thinking about that. At the end of every year, for me, what I would do is through the year, I would make notes on things that I thought were working out very well, and I would give myself sort of a good check mark. And then there were some items that I thought to myself, well, if I could change things now, which if you're in the middle of the year, I never suggest you do. But if I could change things now, what would I do differently about whatever it may be? The way I provide the service, the price that I'm charging, whatever it may be, the way I handled something. And that sort of falls into the trigger. And the reason being is you've got to make these notes. And then at the end of the year, what I would do is I would say, okay, this is a good time for me to implement whatever changes I thought should be made, both in the business and in me, so that going forward in the next following year, my focus would be on those topics or those items, and I could be clearly focused on it. It's difficult to do anything like that in the middle of the year. When you have a seasonal business of any type, it's difficult because I always use the analogy or the story of if I'm charter boat captain. My dad was charter boat captain on Lake Erie, and he ran one of the big vessels, 100+ ton, and so he would take people out, And those smaller boats would be out there, and if there were fish were being caught over here, they could just go zip and go over there and go catch the fish. If Dad had his big vessel out there, it was much more difficult for him to make that quick turn and get over to where the fish were reportedly biting. Not that you couldn't get there, but it's difficult to turn that big ship. And it's the same thing with your business. It's difficult when you're in business during the hot part of the season. And when I say hot, I mean both outside and busy part of the season. It's difficult to make those changes. So always recognize the best time to make those changes are basically the end of the year. You've decided what you're going to do, and the beginning of the next year is when you're going to implement them. And I always had a new service agreement for each year, so it was pretty easy to do at that time as well. So those are the things that you need to be able to reflect upon and be honest with yourself and say, you know what, I was just not very good with that, and I need to improve on that part of my business. And if I can improve upon that going forward this year, and then that's one less thing I have to try to hone or get better at skill wise for the following years, because it is a long-term commitment. I would hope that you're expecting to have with the home watch industry, the home watch business. And my favorite phrase, if I break it down to movie phrase, is Inspector Callahan, 1973, Magnum Force, I think Magnum Force. I got my note down here. And it's where he says, a man's got to know his limitations, right? Well, I replaced that in my notes that a business person, because, we've got to include the ladies, because there are a lot of home watch people out there that are female. And so it could be a business person must know or has got to know their limitations. And that's so true. And that whole phrase was basically reflection upon what your abilities are and where you're strong and where you're weak. And so that's the first and foremost quality that you should possess. And that if you do possess it and you're honest with yourself, I'm sure we all can agree each of us have some improvement to be done in that particular area. The second quality that I want to discuss with you today is integrity. We all have integrity to some degree, but I'm talking about business integrity. Personal, there's all sorts of other types of integrity or areas that you should have integrity at. But first and foremost, in a business, your business has to be assumed, or at least at near the top of those businesses in the area that have or have been known to have integrity. And that starts with the business owner themselves. And so in every aspect of your daily life, especially in business, you want to make sure that the decisions that you make or the things that you do reflect positively towards your business. And you might not think about some of the things I'm going to say today as things that could damage your integrity. Most of us think about lying, cheating, stealing as ways to damage our integrity. Of course, they do. But these are other things that your customer base or people that know your business and may someday hopefully use your business can see, that would chip away at your integrity. And the first one would be over-promising and under-delivering, right? So what I mean by that is, obviously, if you're first sitting with somebody and you say, oh, these are all the things that I do, and then when you actually start to do the service, not all of those things are included, for whatever the reason. And so you want to make sure that what you tell people that you will do when you're there at their home is what you actually do. Another way to overpromise and underdeliver is that you would say to somebody, well, I can get this done by Friday. And I don't, maybe it's furniture off the lanai and into the garage before a storm comes. We'll have that done Friday. But then Friday comes and it isn't done. And then Saturday comes and it isn't done. And then finally Monday it's done. Well, most people would say, well, what's the big deal? It got done. It's the point that you made a firm commitment to have it done by Friday and you didn't do it. So you overpromised and underdelivered. Now, the best way to achieve that same sort of fit would be to say to somebody, hey, look, I'm going to try to get it done by Friday, but certainly by Monday it'll be done. That fits your business model and the way that it actually did happen. But your homeowner isn't expecting it to be off the lanai and into the garage on Friday. So it seems like a small thing, but it's not, because all of these little small things adding up can really damage your integrity. The other thing would be like playing favorites, right? And so, how do you play favorites? Well, there are several ways that you can play favorites. The first one would be that you would, and foremost, that would be you would have a customer who's maybe on the fringe of your area that you have a pricing set at XYZ, and they're, a blue collar family. They struggle to get the money up for the second home, and they're just making it. And we all know those kinds of customers. But then you have somebody who's along the coast, and they that this is their fourth home, and money's no object, and they're getting charged XYZ times two. Same house, same everything. 2 bedroom, 2 bath, 1,500 square feet. 2 bedroom, 2 bath, 1,500 square feet. They both have a pool. Both have a 2-car garage or whatever. Basically, I'm saying the same house. And so when you think about that, if they ever were to get together, or if anyone in the communities got together and knew what charges were being made, all of a sudden, then this person is going to say, well, am I being overcharged? Or this person is going to say, well, that's not quite fair. It seems like I'm getting a deal. And believe me, the person who's getting the deal is going to be just as offended as the person who's been overcharged. So that's playing favorites. And you can also play favorites when it comes to getting to somebody's house. Always it seems that you're getting to their house and doing their things before you're doing someone else's. When they all live in the same community and they're basically asking for the same type of service. Sometimes people can be offended if you don't give their home a bit of precedence, like you might have given another person's home precedence. And that can happen during storms. It seems like they always go to the Joneses' house before they ever check our house, kind of thing. That can whittle away at your integrity. I know it seems petty, but these are things that happen. So you have to be, sort of conscious of those things. The other thing is cutting corners, right? Your service includes making sure that you flush every toilet twice, at least twice. But the homeowner somehow finds that they only get their toilet flushed once. And so it seems they're, again, minor, but you're cutting a corner. Or maybe you walk in and walk out of the house or the condo in less time than you did when you originally started, right? I had a business partner, and this was said to me exactly as I'm going to explain it to you. He said to me, the customer said to me, your business partner takes half as long as you do to do the service. I have cameras. He's in there 8 minutes, you're in there 16 minutes. This is a small condo. He said, now, if it only takes 8 minutes to do the service, I'm okay with that. But then my question is, why does it take you double that time? So our integrity was starting to be chipped away at, because somebody decided that they wanted to race through a service call, thinking that nobody was watching or thinking that it was appropriate. It's never appropriate. If you're charging for a service, you give them the full service, and I'm sure we all agree. But that can happen. Hiding a mistake, that's the next one. Let's say, for instance, I break something, and it's something that's minor, and I can't really, like, let's say maybe a broom. I was using the broom and it broke. Or I did have a toilet brush break one time. And so I could have taken that toilet brush and just put it off the side and forgot about it. But I told the homeowner, hey, look, it tipped over and it broke the bottom off. I'll get you another one. And she says, don't worry about it. I didn't like that brush holder in the first place. I understand, it happens to me. It just, it's not a big deal. But you make them aware of it. The bottom had sort of broken off, and you could have put it back on and made them think that they had broken it, right? It would be that simple, and nobody would be the wiser, but the integrity, right? So you've got to remember that. The other thing is misleading billing, that type of things. And the way that I always explain this is, let's say that I'm going to meet an HVAC tech, and I get there and we get talking, he and I or she and I, about whatever, and it's not really helping the homeowner. And I bill in an hour. an hour basis, and then every 15 minutes thereafter. Let's say that we were there an hour and a half, but 15 minutes of that time, I just sort of jacked my jaw and talked to them, or maybe they did me, and it wasn't productive for the customer. Um, I would always make sure that I would remember that. And so I'll say to them, I would say to my customer, I was there an hour and a half, but we talked for a little while, so it wasn't really productive for you. I'm charging you an hour and 15 minutes. Why do you do that? Sometimes they'll never know that. Well, there again, integrity, but there are other things. There are cameras, there are neighbors, and there are alarm systems, and all of those things will track your time. So you have to be aware of that. But the reality is, be aware that if you are extending that period of time, that's misleading billing in my mind. Forget the fact that you can make an error and charge a little more than you should have, and then just go, oh, geez, I didn't realize, I'm sorry. That sort of chips away at your integrity too, but that's human. And that's acceptable in my mind. If you make an honest mistake, you say it's an honest mistake. And if it's just one, they'll let it slide because your integrity is that high. But if it's all of these little things, imagine each one of these just sort of start to whittle away at your integrity. The other thing that I got to talk about, and this would be the last on integrity, is customer confidentiality. So, like, there are a lot of homes where you will be approached by the neighbor, and they'll say, "Hey, when is Sam and Sherry coming home?" And you'll say, "Well, the last I spoke to them, they were going to be back August 15th for a couple of weeks, and then they're going back to up north and whatever." You're already spilling information that shouldn't be discussed with a neighbor. Now, they even may lead into the conversation and make you think that they're aware of what's going on. But you really shouldn't even confirm it. The best thing that you can do when it comes to personal information, and that is obviously one of the least offensive things that you can do to break customer confidentiality. Obviously, talking about the condition of the house, what they spend on something, or whatever. That's way beyond what you should. But the idea is that the best thing you can do is always say, a lot of times people just never let us know until they're actually in the car or on the plane heading this way. So I really don't know at this time, but I'm sure that if you give them a call or send them an email, if they'd like to share it with you, they will. And so you sort of back your way out gracefully without really saying anything. I wouldn't then go to Sam and Jerry and say, "Hey, look, your neighbor's concerned about you coming home." I never did that. That's just that's just asking for there to be a little friction there, and it's not worth that aspect of it. So make sure you don't. Some things you don't have to tell the homeowner if it doesn't really pertain to the house. Now, if the homeowner said, if the neighbor said something that was really off the wall, you might want to say, but just asking whether or not when they're coming home isn't really their concern in a lot of ways. So these are all items that can whittle at your integrity, that wouldn't rise to the level of lying, stealing, and all of the other things that I first said. But they are things that can whittle away and really hurt you in the long run. And think about it, just one customer. But now you have a second customer in the same community, and they referred a couple people to you, and those people referred a couple people to you, and then all of a sudden these people start talking one time at a barbecue or a dinner or a golf match or whatever, and now you have 6 people confirming what maybe some of them suspected, and your integrity just goes right down into the toilet. So you want to really work on integrity if you have these issues. And you can get it back, but it's harder to earn than it is to start with. Quality I want to talk to you about is resilience. Some would call it grit. Some people would call it determination. But basically, I would never sit here and tell you that every day in the home watch business is nothing but sunshine, rainbows. It's not. There are days where you're going to say to yourself, "Man, this is a really tough business. I didn't think it would be this tough." And there will be other days where you're going to say, "Man, this was the best day in the world. Everything went right. I didn't have any problems." Those days are easy for a business person to keep their attitude and their energy up. But when you're having a tough day, resilience and grit and determination are the things that help you push through those tough days. And what I mean by that is a tough day could be as simple as the fact that you have 10 homes on the schedule and the first or second home that you have has an air conditioning problem, and that air conditioning problem turns out to be an hour or two before it's resolved, or you can get an air conditioning person in, and sometimes that's a very lucky thing if you can, and it pushes your day back. And so if you had plans for dinner with friends, you may not be able to make those plans, right? And that's just, part of business and actually working, but it does sort of suck. And you say to yourself, and then other people will sometimes want to try to get past that problem they had, and then they race through the rest of the day trying to make sure that they end where they thought they would be at the end of the day, whether that's 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock or whatever it might be. That's wrong too, because now what you've done is because you've let that one problem affect your business plan for the day and what you do for people, and your quality starts to go down because you're racing through jobs. You can't do that either. So what you need to do is have the resilience to deal with it, push through the day until you get to the end of the day, and hopefully you can get your day in all of your homes completed. It's making it a long day, and you have to have that, that's that grit, that determination. If you find that you're pushing through the day faster than you should, the homeowners that came after that air conditioning problem deserve the same quality of service, regardless of what happened prior to. And you have to be able to work on your work habit, ethic, or whatever you want to call it, and make sure that you can say to yourself, well, it's not their fault. I've got to slow down. I can't think about the time. I can't think about what maybe I was going to do. The day just became the day. And so those days are going to be tough. And it has a tendency for some people to derail their week because they just can't get over it. And imagine if that were Monday. You have to be able to sort of go like, okay, this is what we're going to do for the remainder of the day or the remainder of the week or however it works out. And I'm going to make a business plan, a schedule around that. And so if you are starting to feel overwhelmed, or if you feel like the pressures of staying on schedule are getting to you, you can't push through with the resilience. But what need to use that resilience for is that you can understand it's going to be a bad day. Don't let it trigger, your disgust or the fact that you're now not in love with the home watch business. And you just have to recognize you're going to have those tougher days, and that through the course of the week or through the course of the month, most of the days will be good. This is just one of those days that just isn't. And so resilience, pushing through problems, certainly, but not letting that affect the way that you provide the service thereafter. And always remember, and this is true, that if you can't get to everybody that day because something happened, the best thing for you to do is to know when you're going to cut the day off and say, okay, the day's done. I'll pick those folks up in the morning. And then, of course, tomorrow has its own schedule. So tomorrow will be one of those days like you just had today, only hopefully you don't have the air conditioning problem. And so that's when you're going to have to go, when you get home and you start to decompress and unwind, and you say, okay, I've got a really tough day tomorrow, and I know it. And then count on your resilience, your grit, your determination to make that day as best you can a better day. Hoping that there are no air conditioning problems or other things that pop up. And I found that most of the time it never did. I can't remember a time where I had a week that was just terrible, unless it were after a storm or just before a storm. And storm preparation and post-storm reporting is another topic entirely. We don't even want to get into that. But just a normal work week, you might always expect and plan for at least one day a week where there's going to be some chaos. And how you effectively work through that chaos is what resilience is all about. You can't let it derail your entire day or the way that you provide your service for your customers. And so there's also going to be seasonal demands that happen. And I was talking a little bit about being very busy in the summertime and then very slow in the winter. You still have people that you have to do. So you're really never off for months at a time. However, uh, the summertime is busy, and quite frankly, there's not much to do here in Florida anyhow. And so you work very hard. Normally, I would plan to work anywhere from 6 to 7 hours a day when I had the full-time schedule in the summertime. But we have a part-time schedule in the winter, so I enjoyed that as well. The one thing that I would caution anybody about, and this has to do with resilience, believe it or not, and that is you make all of your money or most of your money in the summertime. And so you have to make sure that you're a good steward of your money in the summertime. You can't spend it all. You need to put some of that away for a lot of reasons. And we won't get into, like taxes and all that kind of stuff, but you need to put some of that aside so that when you're still working in the middle of winter, and you're going out and doing houses maybe one day a week or whatever it might be, you can have a positive attitude and be resilient because you have some income that you can draw from a savings account or a checking account. And you wouldn't want to be working the entire winter without an income of some type. And so the resilience is tied to your mental, how you look at your business and your mental position or thoughts. And if you have a negative type of outlook, resilience can hopefully push you through it and help you get through that period of time. But you wouldn't want it to be a 3 to 4 month period in the middle of winter. So make sure you save a little bit of money. And I talked a little bit about it too. The other thing is with resilience is you need to be able to balance your work with your life, and the people that would be surrounding you, whether it's friends, whether it's a spouse, whether it's children or whatever. Make sure that they understand in the summertime you are going to work very, very hard. It's going to be a full-time job. And so sometimes you may miss or be late to events. You're just going to, and that's just part of the business. And as long as you can prepare everybody for that, you won't have to work as hard on the resilience and the grit and determination to get the job done. And you won't be maybe forced to try to push through and get it done quicker on that day that you have the bad day, trying to reach, to make a baseball game for the kids or some sort of dinner or anything like that. Now, of course, there are times where you're going to have very important things that you need to be at. And that's when you just cut the day off and say, okay, this day's done. I didn't get to everybody. I'll get to them tomorrow. And that's fine. But resilience is something that is very difficult to put a finger on and understand if you have or you don't have until you're put into a situation where it's just one of those days where most people just want to throw their hands up and take the day off. You can't do that. You're in business for yourself. Normally you're by yourself and you're the only person that you can depend upon to get the job done. And so you have to be able to push through. The next quality I want to talk to you about is curiosity. Now you would think, curiosity? How does that have anything to do with business? Well, good, successful business people never are satisfied with the status quo or the way that it is. They're always looking at, okay, today it's like this. How can I improve? What tools are there? What traffic pattern can I schedule around? Just ways to improve the day, to improve the profits, to improve the business, to improve the quality. And so that curiosity, you have to be able to say to yourself, what if? Maybe so. Try this. Somebody told me about that, or I heard this, or somebody suggested this. That's curiosity. The person who just goes like blinders on and just, I've got to do the work. I got the job done. I got to do the work. I got the job done. There are people like that where they just go do the work. Hey, God bless them. We need them, right? But they're not thinking beyond what is in front of them and the duties that they have to do. And that's important. But you have to be able to open yourself to other possibilities. A prime example is our third conference for the Florida Home Watch Association. Knows me, and they're a young new member of the association. His name was Nick, and Nick had just started his business a year or so before. And he said to me after I was talking what tools I use and things like that. He came up in the break and he says, "Hey Bill, have you ever?" He said, "I just got started. I may not know anything, but have you ever thought about using a headlamp?" And I said, Well, no, I never really have. And he says, well, I use one. And what's neat about it is I have my hands free. So if I need to open a door or do whatever it is, or if I want to see something, I don't have to wave my arm or keep moving it around. I can just move my head and see whatever it is I need to see. And he says, I just thought maybe you had tried it and maybe it didn't work for you. And I said, no, I'd never even thought about it. But I was open to the concept. I bought one the very next week. And from that week forward, I never did a home watch service call without a headlamp. Now, I looked like I was mining for gold. In fact, many of the gate guards or guards at the gate would ask me, "What are you mining for?" Because I'd have it on my head or my being, my body or whatever. But the idea is that I never worried about what I looked like. We're not in some sort of a glamour magazine trying to do a job, and whatever tool was best. And so my curiosity was up. I bought the tool, and here I am. I've never used anything since, and I would suggest you strongly think about it as well. But my point is, my curiosity was piqued. Some people might just have said, well, I've got a flashlight, it's doing just fine. No curiosity. And so you have to be a curious business owner in so many different facets. You have to be able to be willing to discover, to learn, to listen and adapt and try to improve upon what you think is status quo. Can't tell you how many times people will pick up customers for somebody who's maybe sold them to them and they're retiring or getting out of the business. And there's a difference in the way that the service call was done. And this person may be a little bit more progressive or a little bit less progressive. And you can always see that in the conversation between the homeowner and the new home watch person. And so you can almost bet that if you're the person who's a little behind the time, if you can't adapt or improve, somewhere down the road that customer is going to try to find somebody that was providing the extra part of the service, the one that had the curiosity, the one that decided to change whatever it is that they thought was status quo about the service call. And that could be as simple as a reporting process. It could be as simple as how they do the service calls after a storm or pre-storm, things like that. But the idea is that you have to always be looking. Your curiosity bug has to be trying to improve your business on a daily basis. And if it's not, then I dare say that you're probably losing ground to competitors. And so that's a gem I think that most people overlook. Curiosity. The next quality I want to discuss with you is work ethic, being self-motivated even, some people would call it. If the most successful business people never have to have an alarm set. They just don't. They don't have to have somebody say to them, I think we should get started, or I think that this should be done. The most successful business person who's self-motivated, who has a good, hard work ethic, is the person who's at the job before everybody else and stays until everybody has gone. Now, you may be doing that right now for someone else in business. You have a boss, you have a business, and you're that person who first shows up in the morning and stays later than anybody else. And you do that not just one day or 2 days or when somebody's watching you. You do it consistently all the time. You have a good work ethic. You are self-motivated. You're a self-determined person. And that's what you need to be a good business person. Because once you become the boss and there is no one telling you when you have to show up, it is so easy to say, I can do today, or I can do what I'm supposed to do today, tomorrow. And if tomorrow doesn't work, I'll catch it on Thursday. And so the idea is that it's very easy to become a procrastinator. And I have found that most people, and I always ask this question when I'm talking to somebody about who wants to get started in the home watch business. I'll say to them, look, are you the person that is most interested in being in business and in love with the concept of being in business so that you can tell people you're in business? Or are you in love with the idea that you want to have your own, to provide your own self-direction, you're the only one that will tell you uh, what's going to be done and how it's going to be done. And you are going to be the self-motivator to make sure that no one will ever affect your life negatively but you. And that's important. I remember I used to work for a called Polymer Engineering in Indiana. And they hired me to run their newest plant. And they had two plants side by side, well, 30 minutes apart. And so I worked long and hard, second in command of this entire facility, and scheduling and transport and product sales and all that stuff. And I worked very hard and long hours during the year that we got that place up and running. And then just as it was starting to come together and gel, the manager, my boss, I only had one, comes to me and says, Bill, we've decided to melt the two factories together. We're not going to need you, second command. We already have one who's been with us for 20 years. So we're going to have to let you go. He says, couldn't be happier with you. You exceeded everything that we expected and more, but we only need one of you in the new plant. And so I remember on my drive home, which was about a 30-minute drive, and I said to myself that day, I felt first time I'd ever lost a job. And first time, that I ever had somebody tell me, hey, you did the best that we could ever expect, but we don't need you, or want you, however you want to look at it, right? And on that drive home, I said to myself, got 3 kids at home, a wife that's sitting there depending upon me. And I said to myself, I will never let anybody direct my life and be the sole person or entity that tells me how much I can make, where I'm going to live, or what I'm going to do. And from that day forward, even though I may have had other jobs, I always had another job that was competing income wise, so that if somebody did come to me and say, don't need you, I'd say, bye. I've got this over here. And eventually I just worked to the point where I was in business for myself and have been. And the point that I'm trying to make to you is if you're that person who's had that happen to you, or you're afraid it may happen to you, the best thing you can do is be in business for yourself. But you have to be self-motivated. You have to be that person who can wake up without the alarm clock, be ready for the job, jump out of bed, get to it and get it done. And if you're not that person, you may not be really ready to be a business person. It's not to say that you're incapable. You probably could be, but I would hate for you to risk a lot of time, effort, and money, and you don't have that self-motivated gene, that quality. You have to be that person, and there's no way that anybody can teach you how to do that. You have to wake up and jump out of bed and be ready for the day without the alarm clock. And I tell this story not to everybody, but when I first started designing websites, this is 1994, and I got into that business. The time I just talked to you about, that was 1984, so it was 10 years after. But I was designing websites, and I was working that job. Remember, I said I always had me have a job, but I always had something else cooking. And I would get up, I would get home from work, eat my dinner, and about 6:30, I'd be in my office and I'd be working on designing websites and learning what I could learn about it. And I'd do that until 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. I'd get up at 6 o'clock, and the next day I'd be on my way to work. I'd get home 6 o'clock, I'd eat dinner, and from 6:30 to 1 o'clock I would work. And I did that for, 94 to 2001. That's self-motivation. And I'm not bragging about it, but you have to be that person. And then from that point forward, when you are that person, no one will dictate to you what direction your life will have or the money that you can make. But you have to have that self-motivation. And it brings a lot of other things to the table. Like when you can do that, you have a positive attitude about yourself. No small little hill is going to be the point where you stop your business. When things come at you, you're going to just push through with that resilience. But self-motivation is a must. And if you don't have it, if you can't hone it and you can't grow it, then you probably are risking a lot of time, effort, and money on something that has a good chance to fail. And I can't say it in any other way. I'm sorry that I have to say that, but it's true. You if you feel if you start to be if you want to be that person and try to become better at being self-motivated, um, you have to realize that it's going to be a very tough thing for you to do to change um, your wiring, if you will. And what I mean by that is there are a lot of people who just enjoy sleeping in, and they're the people that will hit the alarm clock, snooze, hit the alarm clock, and snooze. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's just how you're wired, but you'd have to change that. And it's a very difficult thing to do. I'm not saying you can't, and I'd be willing to help, but without the quality of self motivation, I think you stand a very good chance that it's going to be a very tough business atmosphere for you. The next quality I want to talk to you about is empathy. And as I was talking to you just now about self motivation and work ethic, um, and how I feel, and I still feel that way, that some people just do not have that gene and that ability. I have empathy. And if you couldn't tell, as I ended that segment, I was thinking to myself, I wish there were a way that I could make that happen for you. I really do. And I have empathy for you because I know that there are a lot of people who have dreams. And one of the dreams for a lot of folks is to be their own boss and sort of direct their own lives. And that's what this is all about, right? I mean, uh, but the reality is that I can only base it upon what I know and what I've seen. Be that first person to surprise me. But let's talk about empathy today. It's a, empathy. You would think, well, does empathy have any place in business? I mean, do you think that Warren Buffett has empathy? Do you think that Elon Musk has empathy? Maybe they don't. I think that they do. I think they have to be able to uh, look at a situation from somebody else's perspective. Now, it may not mean that they're going to take that perspective and change their thought process, but at least they can put themselves in that person's place. And so, as it deals with home watch and the home watch business, empathy is you're going to be calling people, telling them about things that have happened to their home. Hopefully not, but we all will. That they didn't expect, and maybe they didn't expect financially. Maybe they didn't expect um, emotionally. And I'll give you an example of that. I had a couple last year. They bought their home, their Florida forever home. It was exactly where they wanted it to be, exactly what they wanted it to be, and they bought furniture. They got it all set up. They even had family down, and they were really raring to go, so that from this past winter they would be ready for a beautiful winter in Florida after having sold their business and finally retiring. And so they bought it in June. They left in August, and by September, storms, the hurricanes started rolling in, and by the end of October, they had been flooded twice. The first time I got there, just after the flood had receded, and I opened the door, and 2 feet of water just poured out onto my feet. And I had to call them and say, I got to tell you, I've just been to your house. I'm going to send you a video, but you've been flooded by the storm. And, of course, you could hear in the background just the silence. And my empathy is the fact that I knew what this was for them. And I know what Florida's done for me. And so I was like, this is a bad experience that I'm presenting to them. No fault of my own, but I had empathy. And the way that I approached it and the way that I spoke to them about it, I hope there's no way you can really lessen it much, but at least I brought it across as, a little softer than maybe just, hey, your place is flooded, get a contractor, right? Um, he asked me how deep, and I said 4 feet, and I sent him photos. And, of course, they began the process of hiring companies to get in and getting at it again. 2 weeks later, they were flooded again. I had to call them again. And my heart just bled for them. I mean, I just know what this all meant to them. And on the phone, he said to me, Bill, he says, I sort of expected this, and I got to tell you, Florida's not for us. We're going to get the house fixed, and we're selling. And it just broke my heart because they were so excited just 5 months earlier, and now hurricane sort of ruined it for them, And so that happens, and you have to have that empathy. You're going to call when their air conditioner's broken, and maybe they need a new air conditioner, or maybe something's gotten into their house. I've never had this happen, but I've heard of people getting like rats in their houses and then just chewing up everything. You are going to have times where you're going to have to break bad news, and you have to have an ability to feel for these people. Not that you can do anything about it, but feel for them and put them in your place, or put yourself in their place. You may even get some adverse reaction, and they may even sort of lash out at you, and you have to be able to go, if I were them, I'd be feeling pretty rotten too. Just let it slide. But the idea is that you need to make sure that you have empathy for your customers. A lot of people, but for your customers. And so that will make a difference maybe in the future when, remember I talked about that self-awareness, and you start to think about things that you could do at the end of the year that would make you a better company, a better person, and things that you would change. There are a lot of things after a storm has hit that you begin to think, if we had done this maybe a little differently. Not that it would have saved everything, but maybe would have saved a few things. And so you make those adjustments as you go through your business. And if you didn't have the empathy, you wouldn't have the self-awareness, because you wouldn't feel what they had felt. I hope that makes sense. So empathy is really good. You need to make sure that when you're also empathizing with somebody, it could be on another level. Maybe it's not damage to the home. Maybe it could be that you've just decided to raise your rates, and all of a sudden you're getting a little bit of pushback. Maybe you're raising your rates from $50 to $60, and people are asking why, or how can you do this, or that's just too expensive, or whatever their pushback would be. You need to empathize with them and put yourself in their position. And not that you're going to change your rates, but the way that you approach them, both verbally and in your conveyance of your look to them, if you're talking to them, or maybe the inflection of your voice if you're on the phone, will at least not be abrasive. You may not change your mind on your pricing, and you shouldn't, but you have to understand that people will, have a tendency to say some things that they may regret or may not regret, but you can't allow that to change you or the way that you handle the situation. Try to stay even keeled, have the empathy, understand that they may be upset, but I'm still doing what I'm doing. So the empathy doesn't mean that it's going to change you or your business plan. But it doesn't have to be something that creates more friction in the way that you respond to maybe something that they projected to you, if that makes any sense. Having empathy about their situation, and maybe they can't afford that extra $10 or $20 or $30. I can understand it. Doesn't mean that I'm going to change my thought process on it. So that would be, sort of the low side of empathy. But just having the feeling that what your customers thinking or possibly thinking will help you deal with certain circumstances when they pop up at you, so that you're not as abrasive in your responses. I guess what I'm looking to tell you. So empathy is important. It's not, as far as all of these, the 8 of these, I think that would probably be on the bottom side of the list of the most important, but I think that it's something that you should consider. Then from this point, we'll talk about instinct and good judgment. So they sort of go together. We're talking about empathy, and we're talking about understanding where they're coming from. And you have to have the instinct and the good judgment when somebody's pushing back at you to read the room, so to speak, and how you respond means everything. If you're getting pushback on anything, whatever it may be, but let's just say pricing, or the way that you provide service, or the things that you do for a service. If you're getting that pushback, you might want to make sure that you sort of instinctively, or have a good judgment, be able to read the room and say, I understand how they're feeling. I'm not going to say, well, if you just don't like it, find somebody else. Because I can tell you that I've had more than one discussion that could have been very abrasive both ways. And I kept my, I don't want to say cool, but I became less abrasive and more understanding. And the more understanding that I was, the calmer that they got. And pretty soon, by the time the conversation was through, they understood my position and actually said, yeah, I can see it from your way. But at first, sometimes people just, they have that tendency to just be gruff and abrasive, and you have to stay here. But you also have to know when maybe to listen more and talk less, so that they can tell you what they really feel. Because sometimes it's not that they squeak about the most, or scream about the most, that's the most upsetting to them. If you let them speak and you listen to them, they'll continue to talk until you get to the real root of the circumstance. And it could have been, for instance, a partner that you had who was doing the service call, um, 8 minutes when you do it in 16 minutes, right? It could be that. I had one guy call me who was upset about the storm and the preparation that we couldn't get to because the storm came in too quickly. He had no damage, but he called me 3 different times, very abrasive and very angry. There are times when that happens. You still keep your cool. You read the room. You use your good judgment. You give them enough time. You listen to them. But if you take an abrasive phone call twice or 3 times, it's time for you to pass those people on to someone else. And there's nothing wrong with that. So sometimes that instinct and that good judgment means that you can't save that person, that customer, but you've given them every opportunity to express how they felt, for you to understand how they felt, and for the two of you to move forward if you can. And if you can't, then it's just time for you to part ways. Remember, you're a business provider, and they're asking for a business to provide a service. If for some reason the two of you can't find your way back to a situation where you're both happy, it's best to be happy, but not together, rather than be unhappy together trying to push forward. That just doesn't work. Trust me when I say that. And so the other part of instinct and good judgment is the fact that you need to understand you're not going to win every battle, and it's not necessary for you to win every battle. If you have a circumstance where you think you can salvage a relationship and it just wasn't working for whatever the reason, and you've listened and you've tried to make the adjustment and it doesn't work, then it's just time for you both to move on. And so winning the battle, it's not about winning the battle. We're not school children, we're business people. And so don't go adversarially toward people. Read their movements and their thoughts and listen to them. And if it just isn't going to work, move on. I find that people with poor instinct and poor judgment tend to battle with people to the point where the battle is lost anyhow, and then some of their integrity has been affected, and this person who they tried to save probably never could save in this disagreement is now telling everyone in the community about how they had an argument with Bill Wright and Venice Home Watch. I've never had that happen, but I'm saying I could see how it would happen. My philosophy is that if you're unhappy with me, we're best to part ways. And if you're that unhappy with me, with the service that I provided for the year, I'll give you all your money back for the year. It doesn't matter to me. Now, you might not be in that position, but I just feel that it's better that I just cut myself away from that completely. And if it's just a $300 or $400 or $500 to get that person out of my life and make them happy, yeah, that's for you to choose. But that's my philosophy on it. But then there are other things that you can do that would give you instinct and good judgment. That would be a positive thing. It wouldn't have to be a negative situation with somebody. And that would be like, for instance, if somebody would let me know that they're coming into town for the season, I would make sure that I get over to the house and maybe I turn on the water heater, and I'd make sure the air conditioner was up or down, I should say, for them when they came. And I would even take my little shop vac, my battery operated shop vac, and vacuum around the doors and the windowsills and wherever there might have been a spider or two or something that would have accumulated. And the reason I did that was for goodwill. I know how difficult it is to travel all day long, whether it's flying in or driving in. Either way, it's a rough day. And the older you get, it's even more difficult. And then let's say you come in at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock at night, you want to take a shower and just hit the bed and then be refreshed and start the next day with unpacking everything and getting set up for your winter here in Florida. And you find that you come back and there's no hot water and the air conditioner's still at 78 degrees and there's bugs all over the place. And all of a sudden now everybody's cleaning until midnight or 1 o'clock, waiting for the water to heat up to take a shower and to get up grumpy the next day. And so there are things that you can do that instinctively uh, and with good judgment to make it better for your customers. And I never charged for that. It was such a minimal thing. Many times I coordinated it with the last service anyhow, but it was just a goodwill, value added little touch that I would do for them. And you could think about that as well. The other thing that I need to speak to you about is that you have to have some instinct too about the homeowner. Not every homeowner that you will run across is going to be a good risk for you. See, while they're interviewing you as their potential home watch service provider, you should be interviewing them. And you would say, Bill, why should I be worried about them? Well, let's just say you find out that every service person that they've had for the last 10 years, they've had their home for 10 years and they've had 9 service providers. Every year they change a service provider. They could be the type of people who are budget conscious, certainly, okay. They could also be very difficult people to work for or with, or they could just be those types of people that um, switch it up for whatever the reason. Maybe the husband liked the last service provider, and the one before that, the wife liked them. It just, those things happen. But I never wanted a customer for just a year. If there's a tendency in this relationship for them to maybe possibly at the end of the year not renew next year, I've just, in my opinion, wasted a little bit of time. That slot could have been for somebody that's going to be with me for 5 or 10 years. I always sort of assumed that once I got a customer, the only way that I would lose them, they would die. One of them would die, or they would move back north because they're not going to be coming to Florida anymore, or they would move out of the communities that I serve to another area, another community, for whatever the reason. I never had anybody fire me, and I've only had to fire one person, which I just spoke about. And so those are the things that you need to remember, that with your instinct you might avoid some problematic customers. I had one lady who asked me over, and she had been in Florida for 25 years, she and her husband, and he had passed away a couple of years prior. And all of a sudden, she wanted to start with a home watch company. I said, well, you've been doing this for 25 years without a home watch company. What made you change this year and decided that you need somebody? And she leans over to me and she says, I think somebody's been in my house. And I said, while you were gone? Sometimes even when I'm here. And so I said, well, I don't know what to say to that. And she said, well, I can't really sign with you right now. I've got to have, my daughter handles all of this, so I'll have her give you a call. Daughter calls me and tells me she's got early onset dementia. And she's still going to be staying at the home for as long as they can, occasionally by herself. And they're trying to give her her independence. Well, I could just see that she would give the $25,000 brooch to the cleaning lady as a tip, and I'm going to get blamed for it. I mean, that's in my mind, that's all I could think about. She would forget that she gave it to somebody, or she would misplace it, and nobody would ever find it in time, and I would get blamed, and there would be all this shadow, around me, and it just wasn't worth it. So sometimes the customers just have to be passed on, and tell them that there are other home watch services out there that may be willing to help, but I can't. And so keep that in mind. Having good instinct and good judgment isn't always what you may think in your mind it is. But if you can start to improve and hone that skill, it's going to save you headaches upon headaches for sure. Now, the last quality that I'm going to talk to you about today is your risk tolerance. if we were talking financial planning, your financial planner would say, what is your risk tolerance to the loss of your principal? And when you're young, it's high. And as you move toward retirement, which is where most of us are when we're looking at this business, or at least looking at it for maybe possibly retirement income, it's less. And so if your risk tolerance is less, there's a few things you should consider. The first thing is most people who start a business, they have to put a lot of cash out for that business. Sometimes they're buying franchises or equipment, or they have all sorts of things that they have to procure before they can begin the business. In the home watch business, it's really a minimal investment to get started. So your risk tolerance there should be minimal. But you really need to have a couple of $1,000s at least set back for just identified as money for this business. And if you don't, then you want to wait until you do have it, because it's very difficult to run your business thinking about your pocketbook or your checking account. You never want to make decisions on your business based upon whether or not you have money to do it. It just isn't a good business plan. But let's talk about other risk tolerances that may be effective to think about. And you may be able to work through and say, hey, I've got enough risk tolerance for that. And one of them would be, do you have the ability to look at the bigger picture and then set goals to achieve that bigger picture? If you're not the type of person who can see beyond what today will bring you, or maybe tomorrow will bring you, it's going to be difficult to be a good, successful business person. In the home watch business, you will start out putting a lot of effort in that you're not paid for. You're going to get insurance, and you're going to get bonding, and you're maybe going to take some classes and become a little bit more skilled in the services, maybe join an association and figure out a way to report to your customers in a reporting process or equipment or software or whatever it may be. And all of that's going to take time, effort, and money that you don't get paid for. And so if you're that person who's always looking at the paycheck and you can't see that bigger picture, that if I work really hard the next year or the next 2 years or the next 3 years, that the bigger picture is down the road, I'm going to have a less than $2,000 a year that I have in expenses, fixed expenses, and I'm going to make $50,000 that year. So it's a $48,000 net. If you're not that person, if you can't see that, then you have to either come to grips with that, or you have to maybe think about doing something different. Some people can look at it and start to, through help and understanding, start to see the bigger picture. And I only say that because there are some people who are just focused on this week's paycheck, and that's fine. I've been there. Believe me, I've been there. But when you start in a business, when you start any business, you have to have short-term goals, medium-range goals, and long-term goals, and then you have to have a way to get there. And you have to see it. You have to believe it's going to happen. And if you don't, it's very tough to get past that. The other thing that you need to do is you need to be able to dream in months and years, not in days or weeks. And what I mean by dream is that you can, with that bigger picture, dream how you're going to attain on a monthly basis through the next year to achieve that. And if you can't dream it, you can't see it. It's just that simple. So you have to have the bigger goal. You have to be able to see it and sort of understand it. And then from that point forward, you have to have the ability to dream on a daily basis. I can see it happening. Hey, look, I got another customer. I think I'm gonna get two customers next week. I got 3 customers, maybe 4. My first year in the business, of course, we were working part-time. We weren't looking, as I suggest everybody, we had 12 customers. That was like nothing really when you think about it, the amount of money that you make. But it was a start. And then the next year it was double that. And then the year after that it was 3 or 4 times that. So it just grows. But the idea is you have to be able to see it and understand that it's going to take time to get there. You're going to work hard, very hard actually sometimes. And you're not going to achieve the success that that you're even dreaming of right away. And if you think that you are going to hit a home run and you're going to open the door and put the shingle out and you're going to have 100 customers, it just doesn't work like that. Unless you buy a business, you could do that. I mean, and then you're right in the thick of it. It just doesn't work that way. Are there people who do very well to begin with? Sure. But for the most part, 99% of us work very hard for the first 3 years before we really start to see the fruits of our labor. And so you need to be able to, as part of your risk tolerance, perceive yourself stepping off a cliff of uncertainty only with the parachute of that dream. In other words, you step off and have faith that's going to happen, know where you want to be, dream that you can make it happen, and then depend upon yourself to do that, make that dream happen. It's a very difficult thing to do, even though it's not a lot of money. People have so many fears around being in business that what happens to them is they have an unrealistic expectation, first of all, of how fast the business will grow. They have the idea of being self-employed is driving them, but they have no plan to get there. They have a little bit of a dream, but they have no plan, no goals. And then they have a fear, if I really commit to this, if I fail, or if I could be perceived as a failure. Maybe it's a better way to put it, because you never really fail until you close your business. And there are so many people, obviously, out there, friends, relatives, and neighbors will say, when you've been working this business for a year and you have 12 customers, they're going to say, do you think that's ever going to really go? I mean, you've only got 12 customers, right? I think it will. I've got hopes and dreams, and I'm working with people. And then you have to stick with it. Give it 3 years. If you can give it 3 years and it's not happening, then maybe it's just not for you. It just doesn't work. But I would give it at least 3 years. So the one thing that I would say to you about this business is that, and this is going back to the risk tolerance, is that it is a full-time commitment. It's a seasonal business with a full-time commitment that's necessary time-wise from early spring to late fall. And then it's a part-time business commitment for the remainder of that calendar year, or that 12-month period, I should say. And so you have to recognize that and understand, as I had sort of spoke about earlier, that once you do get your business up and running, there's still a risk and tolerance out there that you have to sort of recognize that'll be there, and that you have to be able to accept or work with or have ways to budget around. And that is the fact that you will make, I make $2,000 to $4,000 a week in the summertime, and it all would be all but nothing in the wintertime, because the balance of the people are here. And so you need to understand that just because you have that money that came in and it's in the bank, you can't just spend it all on whatever you decide to buy. You can't go out and run out and buy a brand new boat with that money, because it's going to be needed to sort of get you through that hump period of time from late fall to early spring. And I see a lot of businesses fail that way. They just don't recognize that all of the money they made during that hot time of the season wasn't always theirs to spend then. They needed to save it later. So there are a lot of little pitfalls. And I sort of threw that last one into risk tolerance because there's really nowhere else to put it. But it is a risk tolerance, because if you know that you're the type of person who can't do that, you have to come up with a better program. I don't care if you got to give it to a family member and say, no matter what I say, don't give this to me until fall, or don't give it to me until Christmas. Whatever you have to do, you have to recognize that there again, self-awareness, recognize whether or not you're that person. And if you're that person, come up with a plan to make sure that you can have that money last year round. And if you do that, if you recognize any of these qualities in you, and I'm sure as you're going through this, you're thinking to yourself, that's one I've got to work on for sure. So if there are those that you have, and you have, I would say, 4 or 8 of these qualities already well in hand, you're in good shape to be a successful business person. It doesn't mean that if you're the person a little lower on that scale, you couldn't be that person to work really hard and make and achieve success by working yourself, personally improving yourself on these qualities to become a successful business person. I remember one person that sticks in my mind from all of the people I've known, millionaires and very successful people, and that person was Jerry Klingenpeel. Now, Jerry was a truck driver at one time. He would basically move people's items from one point to another in Tampa, Florida. And Jerry was not the most articulate man you've ever seen. Jerry was not the most handsome man. He wasn't the best dressed person in the room ever. And he was sort of a gruff, rough around the edges kind of a guy. But he rose to be a regional vice president. Actually, at the end, a vice president with the company that I was with. And it wasn't because he changed any of these things that he wasn't. It's because he persisted when everyone told him he could fail or that he would fail. People would look at him and they would, behind his back, laugh at him. And Jerry had the resilience, the faith, he had a lot of empathy for people. He was self-aware. He knew what he was. And he took on the challenge of improving himself day in and day out. And he rose to that level of something of which he had never, ever expected to be through sheer grit and determination. And so I can't close the door on everyone. That may not be, you may be the Jerry Klingenpeel on the level of these things that I spoke of here today, the qualities. And maybe you just have all of the qualities that are really important and that you can work on making yourself better in each of those categories where you will become successful. And so let's never forget Jerry Klingenpeel. He's really, in a way, one of the truly most successful people I've ever met, based upon where he came from and what he did. And I'll never forget him. So I hope you're the Jerry Klingenpeel of the home watch business. Questions, comments, suggestions, put them down below. If you found any of this helpful or beneficial, please subscribe to the channel, give us a thumbs up. Those things really do help. It helps us get out to more people. And the whole idea behind and the concept of this channel is that I can put this information out and help just 1 or 2 people a week or 1 or 2 people a month maybe gain a little bit more success in the home watch business. But I can't do that alone. So I do need you to subscribe. I do need you to comment, and I do need you to give me thumbs up. And it's doesn't cost anything. It takes little time. I appreciate your time. I'll catch you in the next video.